Welcome to ZKast, everyone. I'm ZS Caraval from ZK Research. I'm here with a very special guest, Dr. Michael Cunningham. I'm really excited to talk to you. You're with the Philadelphia Phillies. Your title is Director of Applications, but in the emails that we exchanged before, I'm excited to talk to you because you did a doctoral thesis on the role of technology in sports.
That's correct. Yeah. It was an interesting walk I had down the shore with my wife. We were 4 years ago. We were about the pandemic was in, and I said, "How can I spend some of my time?" So I said, "Well, I was an academic by trade. Spent 15 years at Villanova University in higher ed IT. Always very curious, and said, let's start this doctoral work at Temple University." And with my role at the Phillies, I wanted to really just dive into why sports and entertainment sometimes presented itself as a barrier to entry for emerging technologies. We always seem to be lagging behind, and so I wanted to kind of figure that out.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. I've never heard of anybody doing a thesis in that, so that's I was really looking forward to talking to you. Now, we're both here for Extreme Network CIO Summit, and so I thought it was a good opportunity to talk to you about the role of technology in sports. Now, you've been with the Phillies about 5 years, I think?
It's my fifth season.
Yeah, it's your fifth season. Just in that 5-year period alone, as you mentioned, when you came in, you noticed this gap, right? How have you seen the role of technology in sports change in that time period?
Well, I think there's more of a connection between the fan experience, technology, and then the journey of the fan, right? I mean, technology is it's vital, right? I mean, it keeps the lights on, it helps us do our business, but it helps us grow our business as well, right? And technology as a strategic lever is a very dangerous, but in a good way, opportunity for any firm. So as we've looked at the growth of technology in sports and entertainment, probably over the past 10 years or so, what you'll notice is that as we deploy tech to a fan experience, there's an expectation that we continue to deploy not just the same experience, but one better. And you see that the fan has similar experiences outside of the venue, right? They have similar experiences in airports, they have similar experiences in their own healthcare, in their own homes, and they want that to be in their experience at the ballpark and through our own brand.
Yeah, so for example, if I go to a movie theater and I have digital tickets, I should expect that at the ballpark as well.
Yeah, I mean, you look at just the evolution of gate technology. You look at what a ticket was in terms of a stub, and you look at how that's grown to near-field communication, mobile wallet, and to things like go-ahead entry and biometric facial authentication, so that our fan doesn't have to worry about small things. They can worry about their eyes up and their hearts open experiences walking into our ballpark and across the league at the other 29 clubs.
Yeah, so you're with the home of the Phillies is Citizens Bank Park, and when you think about just the last few years, can you talk about some of the more recent interesting innovations somebody might see if they went there?
Yeah, as you walk into Citizens Bank Park, we just talked about some of the gate technology and go-ahead entry. So at our 3 main gates, you can use go-ahead entry to come in through facial authentication, bring your entire family, your group. All tickets are associated to your one facial account. And as they walk in, they'll experience a ballpark that has Wi-Fi powered by Extreme Networks throughout, so that they can maintain continuity of whether it's finishing that last email from work, whether they need to connect with another friend within the ballpark, stream a game. But our fans have a level of expectation that their Wi-Fi in the ballpark is the same Wi-Fi that they have at home, if not better. Yeah. And it is better. And as they walk through the bowl of the ballpark, they're going to see mobile ordering available at locations. They're going to see units like Mashkin devices, right? Opportunities for our fans to get what they need and come into the inner bowl and enjoy the game. I mean, in my thesis, I talk about the devaluing your experience. And why would someone walk in, let's say for a $90 ticket, and spend two innings in line waiting for something, right? I've just devalued my experience by 2/9.
I think we've all done that, though.
And we've all done that. And we were talking earlier off camera about how sometimes that is part of the experience, right? Waiting in line, talking to another fan. And when you are waiting in line, because lines are inevitable, you'll walk around, you'll see IPTV everywhere. And IPTV for us, powered by Triple Play, allows our fans to stay engaged in the game, and also allows our sponsors to activate many of our relationships that we have in the community through LBAR, right? So you get a chance to understand the brands that the Phillies interact with, but you also get a chance to stay connected with the experience that's on the field.
Yeah, and I think I've always said that there's no better way to get a home run hit than go to the concession stand and wait.
Wait for that foul ball to hit your seat. Wait for that home run to fall on your seat, and someone else will get it.
It always happens when you do that. Yeah. Right. Now you mentioned the partnership with Extreme Networks. Just talk a little bit about that, but more so the role of the network. I actually just completed a survey myself, and one of the questions I asked more a general audience was how have you seen the role of the network change in the last 2 years for business operations? And 93 respondents said it's more important or much more important. And so I'm assuming it's that way in sports, but maybe talk a little about the way you think of the network today.
Sure. I mean, just from my perspective, when you think about enterprise applications, the back of the house opportunity between data integrations, everything is fueled by the network layer. If the network layer is not whole, if it's not secure, then we have issues just keeping the lights on. And we never have those issues with a good, secure network and a robust network. Thanks to Sean Walker, our VP and CTO, and Matt Bryan, our Senior Director of Technology Services, their work along with John and Kevin and Sharon have really helped to put Citizens Bank Park into the level of expectations that our fans would have, as well as our back of house operations. Now, as you think about each of the layers of technology of the fan experience, right? Let's think about outside of the ballpark, right? I'm coming in.
And that is part of the ballpark.
And that is part of the ballpark, right? Outside of the ballpark is part of that experience. We could have a conversation about, technically, the ballpark is part of our homes, because if I don't have a good opportunity to order a ticket, to order merchandise, if I have a bad experience, that abandonment is going to be felt. It's going to be felt on a revenue level. It's also going to be felt in terms of just overall loyalty, right? But let's think about ourselves outside of the ballpark. Maybe I did not get my ticket. Maybe I didn't register for go-ahead entry. Well, being able to register with Free Phillies Wi-Fi outside of the ballpark allows our fans to maybe circumvent a line, come through go-ahead entry, and now they're into the ballpark with ease and with some speed, right? Because speed is what's important in terms of entering into the next level of experiences. And when you're inside the ballpark, again, you look at all the different pieces that are powered by the network layer. We mentioned IPTV earlier. We mentioned things like Mashkin, mobile ordering, your point of sale system. Everything is so network dependent. And we knew that 20 years ago. We may not have recognized that in any industry, but now more so, network is important, and even now you start to see the privatization of 5G network come into play as being a vital part of some of the things that are going on in the player space as well.
Yeah, and how do you think about the difference between Wi-Fi and private 5G? Is it there's not many parks running private 5G today, but is that something you're looking at?
Yeah, from my perspective, when you think about traditional network versus private 5G, you have to think about what is transversing on that network, right? And so I go back to the healthcare experience, right? So when you look at what's going on in healthcare today, private 5G is important because of all the medical devices that are being not just installed and implemented, but being used and monitored. And that monitoring and that security layer is very, I would say, just more important for a healthcare system than maybe other industries. So when you take a look at both the difference, I think private 5G is all based upon what is traversing on that network. And from a sports and entertainment perspective, I would take a look at exactly how our players are maybe using that from a video coaching perspective, dugout iPads perspective. Those things are I think important to have segmented on your network, and even from a strategy perspective, traditional network versus 5G.
Yeah. That makes sense. And that's typically the way you see it deployed in other, as you mentioned, healthcare warehousing and things like that. Now, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't talk to a technologist about that two-letter word everyone's talking about, which is AI.
AI, sure.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I was looking at some CIO conference data, and the adoption of AI within sports is, it's varied. It comes in different places. But how do you think about AI? Is it, from a Phillies perspective, are you guys excited about it, nervous about it, scratching your head still what to do?
For us, it's a convenience factor, right? So when I think about AI, we joked last year, if you said AI anywhere, someone would hand you $1,000, right? I mean, it was such a buzz term.
Certainly helps your stock price.
It does, right? Especially after NVIDIA's sake. But when you think about the application of AI, let's go to the customer sales experience, right? Look at what Microsoft has done just by native Copilot enabled within Dynamics, right? Being able to summarize my relationship with a customer in a way in which you could do manually but could never do at the scale of your customer base, to be able to say, I have a negative sentiment on these 10 customers. I have a positive sentiment on these 10 customers. I have a summary that's saying I'm more likely to buy a full season equivalent than maybe to buy single game tickets. And this is just the application of native Copilot on Microsoft Dynamics. So what happens when we start to train AI models to improve our sales experience, right? Everything's about our customer. And when we think about how do we treat our fans differently, it goes back to knowing how they want to be talked with, right? So from a technology perspective, I'm advising people, think about how we apply artificial intelligence, not just say we're going to go out and use it, and say we're going to go out and build a model. And when you build a model, no one may come to that model, right, if you're not training it correctly. So we have to make sure that we're using it in the right terms. So for us, it's about, let's use it in the customer experience, use it natively, and then learn. And that's why I think, Copilot, paired with Dynamics is a good starting use case for that.
Is there a customer-facing use case, though, where I might eventually in the ballpark cap have an AI interface where, I don't know, I ask it like questions will play?
If you think about just the evolution of assistants,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we've seen digital assistants come to the rise, and you look at what MLB's vision over the next 5 years and even 10 years looks like. It's about, again, that customer journey. So as I'm coming in, asking, perhaps a virtual wall, where can I find the specific Fanatic doll that I need to get, right? So it's more of like the next evolution of things like wayfinding. It's the next evolution of perhaps understanding more about you before you ask that question, right? Because when you come in, we know who you are in terms of your account, and that identified fan in attendance is such an important metric for us to be mindful of, not just from a revenue perspective, but again, from a care and feeding perspective. Every fan has a common interest in the product of the team, but every fan is so different, and that's where I think some of the technology will come into play.
I'd like it if the app just told me that when because I travel a lot for work, if I knew when one of my favorite teams was playing in the town I happened to be in or something, that would be nice. But that seems pretty basic, but we'll see if that comes. Now, when you think of other emerging technologies, I know last year MLB tried a baseball game in the metaverse, and I've talked to MLB about how that went. Are there certain other technologies that you're really excited about? What do you, when you think of the future of sports entertainment, what's out there that's got you really excited?
I'm very excited about how our brand, how our sport can be really consumed globally, and I mean that beyond just I'm going to go and stream the Phillies from the UK, or I'm going to go stream the Phillies from somewhere in Asia, right? I want a fan to be able to immerse themselves into our sport, to be a member of Citizens Bank Park from halfway around the world, right? And I look at what the NBA has done with their technology, being able to be courtside, right through whether it's the Vision Pro or other types of headsets. That type of immersive technology, I think, is just going to get better and better. And I'm excited about that because I think for us, we have a chance to really unlock the potential of Major League Baseball and unlock the potential of our brand, right? You look at the Premier League. It's a global sport. You go anywhere, everyone knows the Premier League. I want everyone to know the Phillies. I want everyone to know Major League Baseball. And having that technology, and we know the cost of that technology for the consumer is going to continue to tick down over the next 3 to 5 years. And that's what gets me excited, because then it's not time zone dependent. It's not necessarily dependent upon, can I have access to this streaming package, et cetera. It becomes really accessible to all. And I think that's an important piece in the work that we do. Yeah,
I think mixed reality is fascinating too, what you could do with that, because now you can actually get the perspective of what it's like to be a hitter. And because when you're watching on TV, you hear my buddies yelling all the time, I could have hit that fastball. It's like, I don't think you could have.
Well, you look at AR and you look at MR in the instructional space, right? And you see that coming into play, certainly in the instructional space, with I want to be able to see a specific pitch. How do I hit that specific pitch? But from a fan perspective, like you said, you and your fan, your buddy, you want to feel that, right? Or you want to learn how to do that. And what's so important about our game is that it's not just the major league level. We were talking about earlier about a common friend who has someone in the minor league system. Well, I have a son who's a little leaguer, right? Being able to help them understand what it would take to get to the minor leagues, what it would take to just learn the sport, so that there's not an abandonment of interest in the sport. I mean, I remember, I'm not an athlete, as you can see. I'm more of a technology and an IT and an academic guy. But I remember being 13 and that was it. I couldn't make my high school team and I was done. But if you have this type of technology that's available to all, they're going to have more interest in the sport. And it's not just about consuming who's on the field, but it's about playing that sport, right, as a collective whole.
Well, even just watching it was, I think Scott Gutterman from the PGA that said to me that what AI does is that lets the untrained eye see what the trained eye does. And so for a lot of casual fans of baseball, you may not know that a certain hitter struggles on 0-2 counts or something like that. But if you're able to pop that kind of data up on the screen all the time, all of a sudden it creates a little tension that maybe wouldn't have been there before, which now makes the game a lot more exciting, I think, just from
Yeah. 5 years ago we were talking about second screen impact and the impact of second screen within the ballpark, and the availability of statistics was very important. But you look at what's occurred with the broadcast. I think Apple has done a tremendous job at presenting our sport on Fridays. You mentioned about the overlay of certain data points. That draws in curiosity, right? And the more curiosity we have from our fans, the better it is. But it all goes back to how are we delivering that technology experience, and I think it's important to note that it occurs from all different aspects.
Yeah, well, as a fan of the game, I can't live without the data today.
That's right.
Yeah. All right, Michael, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just important to note for this conversation, you look at augmented reality, you look at mixed reality, and you look at, again, availability of those technologies for our fans. And it's beyond just coming to the ballpark and I'm going to go put on a headset and use a bat to hit a virtual home run. It goes about understanding the game, and I think that's a very important piece of that technology. When you think about the fan journey, and you think about how we unlock new fans, from a sales and technology perspective, that notion of CRM technology, and people have back of math napkins, they have Excel sheets, et cetera, but it's knowing not just who your fan is, but knowing what about your brand is going to attract them to stay with you.
Yeah.
Not just when you're winning, but when you're in the off season. How am I staying in touch with my fan, and how do I know what they need? And that's what I think is important about the sales cycle, is that you have things like an agent of just basic chat agents. I mean, look at what we've been doing with Satisfy Technologies, and having fans ask questions of that so that they can get directed to our team store, so they can get directed to a ticket rep. Those are very important pieces that we help to support.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Go ahead.
I was saying it's interesting you say that, because one of your NHL colleagues said it to me. He said he understands while the team's winning, it's easy to keep fans, but every team goes through ups and downs, and it's those downs they really look to technology to help bring the fans back in and stay engaged when the team perhaps isn't doing so well.
Yeah, and one of the things that I saw in my research, a lot of my research is based on a very old theory, technology acceptance model, right? We all know about the technology acceptance model, and we all know that we get one chance to really help pivot a fan, pivot a consumer away to a convenient experience, right? Is it useful to me? And does it provide convenience to me? And what we saw with things like go-ahead entry is that once they use it, they never went back.
Yeah.
They'll continue to adopt it, and that continuous use, that continuous adoption, we see that in other aspects of our ballpark. I mean, you see that once I use Mashkin, I'm going to go seek out that beer fridge. I'm going to go seek out those popcorn and Cracker Jack areas more so than I am going to wait in the line, because that was a better experience. And I'm going to continuously use that and continuously expect it. One of the things that I know we'll talk about tomorrow is how are these technologies paired together. Many ballparks are doing these in silos, which is important. Production pilots and being able to deploy technology in our seasons is very difficult, right? We have our traditional season, we have our fiscal year, right? And sometimes we have the calendar year. And by the time you're done planning, you may lose a cycle. And so it's important for these production pilots to occur. But now our challenge is the so what. How do we cross the chasm into more mass adoption? And how do we pair the technology of, let's say, go-ahead entry with a better mobile ordering experience, or a better experience overall for fan and merchandise pickup through lockers and things like just walkout? But how do we make sure we're directing those same fans there? It goes back to identifying those fans and identifying them with a certain transactional level and data type.
Yeah, and that's a good lesson for all CIOs out there. Nothing frustrates me more than, even when I travel and I've got to sign up for this app and this app and this app, and they're all different experiences, and some use shared passwords, other ones social ones, some don't, and that I'm glad you're thinking about that, because that perhaps is the biggest frustration point for fans, is just the number of IDs they have to manage.
It is, and that whole identity management piece, we talk about that on back of house being so important. You secure the identity layer, and you'll have a better, robust experience from a business side application user. Same thing with the fan experience. Secure the identity layer of the fan, and they're going to be able to adopt the next experience that you roll out, and it actually helps you rolling out that next level of technology. The other piece that everyone should start to consider is the relationships we have with those who influence our venues, right? So the relationship with the concessionaire is so important. because so many of our fans come to our ballparks for our food and for the great experience that comes with that, right?
That's one of the highlights.
It's one of the highlights, right? What better experience than having your favorite drink, having your favorite food, watching your favorite team. But if we don't hone in on those relationships, the technology strategies will go in two different directions. And therefore, you'll start to see fragmented experiences in ballparks and in venues. And then that leads to fan frustration. Right?
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that we're continuing to pair that. So those relationships, I think, are key. And you see that with all concessionaires, those key relationships between whether it's Delaware North, whether it's Aramark or others, those are very key to the success of clubs as well as to the fan experience.
All right, Michael. Well, certainly appreciate your
Good
time.
conversation.
Yeah, no, that was a great conversation. We've had a tremendous amount of innovation since the pandemic ended, and I think a lot of that was brought in because of that. But it's been great to see pro sports teams like the Phillies continue to drive what's possible in the area of sports entertainment. So, thanks very much for that. So, on behalf of Michael Cunningham from the Philadelphia Phillies, I'm ZKast saying thanks for watching. Please hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you next time on my next episode of ZKast.